Okay, we've begun. Welcome everybody to the Early Adopters ORUK UK event. As mentioned, this is recorded now, so if you want to switch off your camera, please do so. Welcome, I'm Sheldon Ferguson, policy lead in the local digital team. We have responsibility for a number of things, including cybersecurity, but also the digital transformation of services. And we've enjoyed you here to have a look at early adopters for Open Referral UK. There'll be space to ask questions, and also there'll be a dedicated Q&A for the team later on. But in the meantime, please do feel free to raise questions in the chat, and there'll be an opportunity to fill in some feedback at the end of the session as well. So here's the agenda for today. In short, we have Kelly focusing on how we get to collection, moving, and showing that you can get rewards relatively quickly. Then we have James explaining what council has to do to make an effort at the front end, as well as the back. And if this data is not well presented, it will fail. And then lastly, we will have Vish explaining the potential and the bigger picture, and also that this is not straightforward, but also worth doing. And in the end there, we've also got Ian Singleton and James Marshall speaking as well. And we've got Q&A as well, and also an opportunity for some closing remarks. So I'm going to get going now and hand over to Kelly Hewitt, who's going to talk about approaches to data collection for ORUK implementation. So over to you, Kelly.
Good morning. Thank you everyone for coming this morning. My name is Kelly Hewitt and I'm the Digital Access Project Manager working for CAN. So I'll just start the slides here. So just to begin with, just to introduce our team. So it is a small but mighty team. So it's myself and Chris, who is also on the call, and he is a project administrator. But then we also have our supplier, who is digital co-production, and Simon with us, who will be speaking a little bit later on. So as part of our project, I think one of the main reasons that we've been asked to present this morning is to provide a bit of a perspective as to how a local authority could potentially commission a voluntary and community sector organisation to deliver the adoption of ORUK. So in the example of our work, we had a senior lead in NHS Dorset who had a specific interest in the adoption of ORUK, had seen it online, and actually identified CAN as a really good organisation to implement the work. So initially our funding came from a suicide prevention pathway, so specifically providing mental health support, but we do collect data on everything from access to food, transport, and community and social groups. So in the last 18 months, we've developed and provided a proof of concept pilot. And as I explain in further detail later in the presentation, that is our way of sort of collating evidence to make it become more of a system-wide piece. So what do we want to achieve? I'd imagine a lot of you are here for some of the reasons that are on the slides. So you may have developed an interest or had an interest in the adoption of ORUK because you've realised that perhaps accurate and up-to-date information is key to people finding the help they need and when it's right for them. However, as with any local authority or local area, there are often multiple independent directories and local lists available across Dorset. So in a survey that we completed back in January last year, we actually found that frontline workers in Dorset reported a satisfaction level of only 26% with existing online methods for identifying services for the public. But also 57% found that online information was inaccurate, and almost half of those respondents were overwhelmed by results supplied to them. So what we mean by that is that some of the directories that are out there, there isn't a capability to really filter down into exactly what that individual is looking for in terms of how they access that support, eligibility criteria, how to make that referral. And so the survey that we completed was with frontline workers. So we'd imagine that percentage would likely increase even further if we were to ask the same questions to the members of the public. So as you can imagine, some of those challenges have resulted in delays in connecting people with the services that they need. And also some of those directories that are available can be quite complicated and adds to that complexity of navigating health and social care systems. So how ORUK help? So hopefully you know a little bit about Open Referral UK before coming to this session. But just to give you an overview, Community Action Network have been funded to explore whether the adoption of a shared data set will enable professionals working in Dorset to understand what support is available in both a timely and reliable way. So Simon will talk a little bit later in the session around aggregation, but we understand that the benefit of using Open Referral UK is that any individual can access the data in the way that they prefer. So we understand that there are always going to be multiple directories available in a given area, but we are enabling people to have that choice to access that information at the time and place where they need it, but it's pooling from that same data set. So the main elements of our project. So we've gone through this process since March 2022. So one of the main reasons that NHS Dorset commissioned Community Action Network as the organisation to deliver this work is that we are a local infrastructure charity. So as part of being a local infrastructure charity, we have a membership of charities with over 700 members. So as you can imagine, that every single one of those members probably offers 10 plus services to the general public. So as a local infrastructure charity, we had a really good place to start in terms of engaging with the local VCS so that it can share some of the wonderful services that they offer. So during this project so far, we've onboarded over 250 organisations into the shared data set. And we do feel that our expertise in engaging the VCS has helped us to achieve that number. Okay, so to evidence the effectiveness of using ORUK, we approached digital co-production to roll out Service Finder in Dorset. So Service Finder is the user interface that we have used, that we've put in place to evidence the success of ORUK, and the API is linked to that interface itself. So at the moment, we have over 440 frontline workers in Dorset using the tool. So at this stage, it isn't a public-facing tool, but I will go into a bit more detail of what our next steps are of the project. And finally, our ultimate goal here is to ensure that other local directories start using our shared data set. And we have made initial conversations with other organisations such as Access Wellbeing, some of the BCP Council funded projects, and something called the Early Help Partnership, which is based around family support. So how do we collect information about services in Dorset? So I know that James is delivering a presentation later on for Southampton City Council, and I believe that he'll be talking about how organisations assure their own data. But at the moment in Dorset, we do it slightly differently. So we don't currently have a capability in our system to enable organisations to update their own information. So at the moment, it's the onus is on ourselves as a team to contact those organisations to make sure that their information is up to date. So step one, we engage with the local provider either by email or through networking events. So as a local infrastructure charity, oops, I can't see the presentation anymore. Sorry, 2 seconds. There we go. Sorry. So as a local infrastructure charity, we are invited to attend a lot of networking events that promote various types of community support. So we utilise that opportunity to speak to those people in person, tell us about the project, And we've had a really successful rate of onboarding by doing that. So what we also ensure that we get is written or verbal consent to be included in the data set. And the reason that we do that is that that's helped us to maintain an ongoing relationship with that provider, and therefore increase the likelihood of them responding to our assurance emails to say that their data remains correct and up to date. We then use the aggregator tool to transform the services into ORUK format. So at the moment we are provided with we're given the provider's website, and then we'll specifically delve into what they've got on there and identify all of the specific services that we wish to put into ORUK format. And then the last thing that we do is we publish this through the ORUK compatible API, and then into Service Finder. So at the moment, this process is only done by primarily Chris, but also I support where we can. So as you can imagine, it's quite a big job as part of our project. Okay. So just wanted to talk about what we've achieved so far. So we believe that the data set for us has highlighted the potential for ORUK wider adoption, particularly around simplifying navigation and reducing barriers to access. So a lot of the feedback that we've had from frontline workers is that instead of having a list of sort of 20 to 30 results, they're now getting 5 or 6, but actually those results are really relevant and pertinent to that person wanting that support. Also we have completed several assurance cycles during our project, and we do this every 2 to 6 months. And we produced our final report back in December, and we did a random selection of data that we've got, and we found a 93.7% data accuracy. So that just shows the impact of maintaining that contact with the organisations. And I think we had around 60% of organisations respond to that assurance email within perhaps the first 48 to 72 hours. So we feel that that's quite a high rate as well. So we have recently been granted some additional funding so that our data set can be embedded into the new Access Wellbeing website. So Access Wellbeing is a mental health transformation project that is being sort of put out across Dorset. So there are several physical wellbeing hubs now popping up across Dorset. But in addition to that, they have a digital website. So any members of the public can go onto there to receive wellbeing support. So we're just in the early development phase of that. And that will mean that all of our data that we've collected so far will then be available to general members of the public, which is great news. And we've also had similar talks with BCP Council to do the same. So they currently have a sort of adult social care community directory. So we're hoping to support them to link our shared data set to that. And then finally, we have been approached by the Homewards BCP programme, and we have recently submitted a bid so that we can potentially produce a public-facing interface that specifically caters towards support around employment, life skills, and also education. So the beauty of Open Referral UK is that depending on the needs of the provider or organisation, they can extract elements of the data set that they need. So for example, we've got access to food maps and transport directories, and it could be the case that they only extract that particular type of service into their tool just to make it even more simplified for their users. So tips for collecting service provider data. This is one of the main things or reasons that we were asked to come today, I think. So as a VCS organisation, hopefully, we can help here. So in terms of service provider data, like I said before, we've had a really good uptake when attending in-person meetings, meeting the teams on the ground, learning about what their services offer. has been really good for us. Also diversifying our data in terms of locality and support type. So what I mean by that is that we have come to really understand what we've got in our data set, and through many of the conversations that we have at those VCS representation meetings, we're able to identify gaps in service, and then try and direct our sort of targeted outreach towards those areas. So for example, transport comes up all the time as a specific gap. So if we can try and find all of the available information in that area, then hopefully it can support the service users, but also the frontline workers using the tool. What we've also done is engage in teams that have any kind of document, spreadsheet, internal list of signposting support. So particularly social prescribers have been renowned to have something like this within their team. So as part of the onboarding process, when those people become service finder users, we'll also ask them, well, actually, do you have a Word document, a list with, you know, a potential list of organisations we can approach? And we've got we've had huge benefits from doing that. And then next, use your local infrastructure charity. So if you are working for a local authority and you're thinking about adopting ORUK, consider your local infrastructure charity, because they're a valuable resource. A lot of the services that you'll list within your user interface will include charity support. And like ourselves, they're likely to have some kind of database or membership that you can utilise, just to have an idea of the kinds of organisations you want to contact in your first instinct. Yeah, you know what I mean. So number 5, personalised calls to action. So as part of our outreach, we've tried to really highlight the clear benefits of being involved in this work. And one of those for us has been around increasing awareness of your services. So we can often highlight to providers that actually finding their specific list of services on their website has actually been quite challenging. So we've been able to support organisations with sometimes reconfiguring their website, but also just by having a really simple list of services on the service finder, it's helped them to increase their number of referrals. So yeah, we've tried to support those organisations at the same time as onboarding. Obviously, it's not always possible with capacity, but we do try our best where possible. What we've also done is made it really clear the difference between a shared data set and a website interface. So often the question we'll get asked is, well, aren't you creating another directory? So from the get-go, when we started this project, we tried to refine our narrative so that we can try and explain to people that actually the ultimate goal of what we're doing is creating a shared data set, which can then be communicated and sent to other existing directories. So although we produce the Service Finder tool as part of this work, that's just been our means of evidencing the impact and the success of ORUK. So yeah, I would say to anybody, if you can, just make that narrative really clear to people. A couple of the last things, so involve local directory leaders and steering groups. So help them to recognise that you are aware that they're in this space, and where possible, help them to understand what the work is about and the benefits of them actually ingesting that data set. And if you think it's appropriate, invite them to the steering group as well, just so they can understand how their work can sit within the full sort of ICS or system. Number 8, this I'm sure will be expanded in further detail with James, but I would say if you can, make the onboarding process for service providers as simple as possible. So one of the things we learned very early on in the project is that we initially created an Excel template with the ORUK categories or labels. And we asked organisations to complete that and send it back to us. But we very soon learned that that wasn't happening. So from 3 to 4 months into the project, we did make the decision, which is obviously a bit more resource intensive, actually going onto the website ourselves and extracting that data. But it's meant that ever since doing that, we've had a much better relationship with the provider, because they feel like it doesn't take a lot of effort for them to actually get involved and also assure the data itself. Then lastly, sharing your successes on social media. So particularly with the voluntary and community sector, they're always really keen on sharing their success on social media, particularly for, finding new funding opportunities for them. So some of the social media posts that we've done have been to say, this is a new provider that's been added to the service finder. If you want to find out more, then you can email us. So you can be quite creative in the ways that you're sharing the success of the project on social media, even if it's kind of an indirect effect. So barriers to ORUK adoption. So some of these things you may have come across, or you may be thinking about in terms of considering ORUK adoption. And the MHCLG are aware of definitely all of these. So I was just going to go into them a little bit briefly. So in terms of the delays from other stakeholders, sometimes I think as a VCS organisation, it has been a bit of a challenge to find the best contact or senior leader. And it can often take several connections, several months to actually find the necessary person to make those fundamental decisions around proceeding with ORUK adoption. The second one is outdated software. So sometimes, for example, we had a recent conversation with somebody who represents NHS Service Finder in Dorset. And unfortunately, the software that they were currently using was PHP coding from back in 2009. So they felt that it probably wasn't the most appropriate time to think about ORUK adoption until they redevelop their systems, which they are doing in a year's time, which is great. But it's just to be mindful of that as well. And where possible, including the technical people within those conversations to make sure that they understand how it works. The next thing is money. So as you probably understand, there will be an initial sort of investment into ORUK adoption. And another interesting thing that we've found within the VCS is concerns around data sharing and resource demands. So one of the challenges that we've had is that particularly with some of the community directories which are maintained and developed by charities, people can often be very protective of that. So I think it's just being aware of that. If you are a local council and you want to begin those initial conversations with other directories, it's just being mindful of the number of years and the amount of time that it may have taken a local charity to collect all of that information, and just being respectful of that. But yeah, that's just one of the observations that we've had. So just to summarise, what we've learnt is that adopting the ORUK standard improves interoperability, and we've felt that throughout our project it's helped to reduce duplication. And one of the key reasons for the success in our project is by maintaining strong partnerships across health, social care and voluntary sectors. And lastly, maintaining up-to-date data has required some semi-automated processes and long-term funding. But again, Southampton City Council will have a bit more information on that as well. Okay. So in terms of securing organisation support, just to summarise as well, I think it's important for us to understand that there is some kind of incentive that is required for organisations to get on board. And I don't mean a monetary incentive, I just mean in terms of explaining to the organisation what the benefit is of them getting involved in the work. And generally just refining your narrative and providing a bit more education around what Open Referral UK is and how it will benefit our system. Oops. So next steps for us, we are working with digital co-production to refine the service finder itself. And also we are, hopefully with the additional funding that we're due to receive, we'll be developing public-facing tools, both for Homewards BCP and Access Wellbeing. And then at that point, we'll be able to evidence the success of integrating the shared data. Thank you. So I will hand you over to Simon.
Morning, everyone. Thanks, Kelly. Simon Dickinson, and I'm representing two organisations, actually Local Place Solutions and Digital Co-Production. And I'm just going to cover 4 slides, I think. And there's the sort of very quick agenda of what I'm going to cover. I thought I could move it on to the next slide. Can I? Has that moved on?
Yes, it has, Simon.
Excellent. And just reiterating really what Kelly said, that this is like any program. I think you need to be clear what's the problem you're trying to solve, and have those clear objectives across all your stakeholders. And those are the sorts of things that you're trying to achieve, about more efficiency around collecting the information, making sure it's more accurate. And I think a baseline is really important. Kelly referred to 93% of the data as accurate, and you might focus on the 7% that's inaccurate, but all the baselines we've been involved with show that only 50 to 60% of the information in directories currently tends to be accurate. So you've got to create that need and that buy-in to change across all your stakeholders. And this is about interoperability. The data standard enables us to work in that joined up way. And I think it's more than just technology interoperability. It's also that shared vision across stakeholders and making sure we understand the real detailed process that all of those stakeholders go through with regards to maintaining information or being able to search for support. The model that we would always encourage focuses on 4 key bits, if you like: the collection and maintenance of the information, the need to make sure it's accurate and have some sort of assurance capability. And a really important part of that for us is the aligning of taxonomies. It's so important to know how you are tagging services, because that's what drives accurate searches rather than returning inappropriate service information. So that requires quite a lot of input of thought. And the taxonomies are also critical for any reporting you want to do, understanding how many searches are there and how many of these sorts of services are there. You need that framework of how you're going to tag your services, the reuse of the data. And I think that in all the work that we've been involved with, we've maybe made a mistake in not making sure at the start we were maintaining more than one directory. Because once you've started maintaining only one directory, people put you in as Kelly said, you're just another directory. But actually we need to focus on this being a shared data asset, which is reused. And I think making sure that's clear at the start of your program will prevent a whole load of challenges about people culturally thinking you're just building another inaccurate directory. And I think the management reporting capabilities are really important, and they drive a lot of people's belief when they can start to get information about, well, how often are my services being searched? Which are the words that are being used to search for my services? You can see charities starting to have some interest in being involved in that program. So the solutions that we've got that are open referral compliant, one of them is the sort of the back end, if you like, the heavy lifting about bringing together information, aligning the taxonomies, deduplicating and aggregating the data set, and then creating the API. And that's what we would call also sufficiency reporting, how many of what types of service exist. And that's obviously the supply in the market. And then the front end solution that Kelly referred to, Service Finder, which is focused, as Kelly said, on professionals being able to search and find and share things with the citizens that they're supporting. We've got something which we call Links Generator, which is the ability not to share the whole API, a lot of charities would not be able to deal with an API. But what we've got is the capability to say to those charities, look, if you want to represent some of the data from that shared data pool on your website, just pick the ones you want, and it can be then branded and included on their webpage. So we think that's an easier way for charities to get involved in the bigger picture. And then the demand reporting, who's searching for what, and where. And I'm just going to finish with, so this is a piece of work we're starting now, trying to be, I think we are perhaps underplaying the capability here of a data standard around local service information, because we're all talking about the bottom right hand of that picture, directory, trying to maintain a directory, and the word for me sounds pretty outdated. And so we focused a bit on the other end. So we know that in any medium-sized integrated care board, so any health and social care partnership, there are more than 1,000 conversations every week between a clinician or a professional and someone from a citizen in that local place, where they spend a lot of time taking information for a referral or for an assessment. Some of those don't meet threshold, but there's a lot of emotional input into capturing and updating that data. What we should be doing is actually integrating that process with that shared data asset and creating and maintaining and updating a personal waiting well plan for somebody, which we can produce in any language. And we should be monitoring that person's take up of that community plan. So I think there's a far bigger vision and ambition here that we can get towards. Absolutely, the starting point is getting people to buy in data standards, but once you've done it, I think there's a whole load more opportunity. So thanks very much. I'll hand back to you, Sheldon, I think.
Okay, thank you very much, Simon. So does anybody have any questions for Simon and Kelly from their wonderful presentation? Silence is golden. Well, I'm going to put a quick one. Kelly, you pointed out some of the challenges you've had there, trying to get hold of decision makers. This might be a bit mean from me because obviously everyone's situation is unique. But what was the hook when you found your decision maker, basically? And what was the one that, landed a message saying, we need to buy into this?
Sorry, what was that bit at the end? It cut out on my side.
I was just, once you found your decision maker,
Yes.
what was it that, made them persuade, said, oh, yeah, we need to buy into this?
I think it was, I know, particularly just going onto the Open Referral website and you looking at the developer section really helped them. But also the traction that has been received through LinkedIn and knowing that it's been now endorsed by the MHCLG has helped, I would say.
Okay, that's wonderful. I've just, bear with me a moment. I've seemed to have changed my screen. No. Okay. With that in mind, I'm going to move on now to Vishal. It's going to talk about scaling to a single place-based ORUK UK platform. So over to you, Vish. And thank you to Kelly and Simon.
Cool. Good morning, everyone. I'm Vishal Mistry. I'm from Lancashire County Council. I'm part of the digital team. I'm a principal data manager, and I just want to sort of share a couple of slides with you this morning to sort of explain Lancashire's journey to get to a place where we can use Open Referral and potentially have a single scalable platform to support all the place-based data within the Lancashire region. The first slide I'm probably going to sort of go through, and it probably feels a repeat of what you've already heard this morning, but it's probably just important to understand the why. So why is Lancashire interested in a shared data standard? And ultimately, it's about how we're going to use that information. So it does come back to the directory of services we're going to publish, who's going to use them. But ultimately, we want to promote better access to information. We want to support vulnerable groups in the community, assist our carers, promote a prevent agenda. So if we can get high quality information to our residents, the theory goes we can keep them well for longer and keep them out of Lancashire services. The other side of that is once they are engaged with Lancashire services, we need that high quality information to signpost them to the right community-based service to better use that data that we've already got. So that's kind of the why, and it sort of reiterates some of the messages that have already been said this morning. The other side of the equation, apart from providing benefits to our residents and our officers, is what benefits are we looking for as an organisation within Lancashire? And the four main ones I've put on the screen here. We are looking for some operational efficiency. We do want to sort of reduce the amount of management, the amount of duplication we're doing in handling some of this data. We've got multiple services, multiple directorates, potentially having multiple solutions, managing the same service provider. That leads to issues with data accuracy. You know, within Lancashire County Council, we've got multiple DOS products. Each one of them has a small industry behind it to keep up to date. We want to increase our collaboration with partners, in particular the ICB, but other districts within our area, voluntary and faith sector organisations, to make sure we are sharing the information we have got, but ultimately making sure we're getting good quality information coming into Lancashire. All of that, apart from improving the journey for our residents, we expect to see a cost saving within Lancashire County Council. So that's removing duplicate solutions we've got, moving people away from spreadsheet solutions into more automated solutions that they can use. So the reason I've sort of put these two slides in is sort of to say there's a bigger picture here than just the sharing of the data. It's ultimately the benefits that we want to give to our residents and the benefits that we want to feel as an organisation. So where are we in our journey so far? Lancashire County Council 2 years ago was part of the DFE Find and Connect programme, which was aimed at creating a central repository of children's services information. The ask that came to digital services was, do you have a solution that allows us to capture this information and share it with the DFE in an efficient manner, i.e. do you have an Open Referral API compliant system? Unfortunately, the answer 2 years ago was no, we didn't. What that meant was we collected services information. That information was in effect collected in spreadsheets, and it was sent as a one-off data load to the DFE to feed their solution. And despite all of the good work getting that data collected and getting that data up to date, as soon as it was sent, in effect, it was out of date because there's no mechanism, there was no governance behind it to keep it up to date. There was no digital solution in place to allow our officers or our service providers to keep that data up to date and make sure it went to the DFE. So that started a programme within Lancashire County Council where we started reviewing how many different solutions we already had and could they meet the need of holding data in a compliant format, which would have an API over the top of it that would allow us to share with partners. And what we found after a little bit of research was we had an incredibly diverse ecosystem. We had multiple websites, multiple directory products within Lancashire County Council. So, for example, we had a SEND solution, we had a solution for family hubs, we had a solution for early years. All of them had service information in them, but they all had separate teams, separate technology stacks that data was held in, which obviously led to increased cost. Because of the sort of the pressures that people have on their time, it also meant none of these solutions were banged up to date. You know, some solutions were really good at providing service providers the ability to update their own information. Other solutions were really good at the interface and allowed people to search for information in a really good way, display it on a map. Other solutions had limited amount of integrations with other national data sets, but it wasn't a good single experience for our residents or our officers. So in summary, we had lots of technology. None of it was really helping us actually deliver the outcomes we wanted. What we wanted was a platform that allowed us to share information with partners, collect information from service providers, give us the ability to manage and curate that information. Simon spoke earlier about tagging. We had instances where different solutions would use different tags for the same thing. So, for example, our early years solutions would have filters on there that would let people filter by age group, but our second solution would bucket them up into different groupings. So it became confusing to the end user when they were looking for services, because depending on where they looked, there was a different set of filters they had to select. There's always a level of sort of data validation and verification that you want to do. And that's not just about making sure the data is right. It's also about making sure if you want that data service or that data element published on your directory associated with your organization. So there's always the validation and verification stage you've got to consider. The final bit of the puzzle before you publish a directory is the content management. How do you want it to look? How do you want it presented to the end user? Now, a lot of this is built on the basis of having good quality service information in the first place. But if any bit of that sort of process is missing, you do not get the outcome you want. You do not get a directory product that either residents can use or officers can use internally. So what we started doing is we started launching some pilots with the ICB, but we lacked an open referral API. So what we ended up doing is, in effect, commissioning the ICB to build a product for us, which then leads us into another issue that we faced, which was alignment of governance. So working with partners is absolutely the right thing to do. However, if you can't align the governance, and what I mean by that is contract renewals of when solutions will stay in place, when directories will get updated, it ends up meaning that you're driven by what other organizations are doing and not necessarily what your organization's own objectives are. So it forces us to sort of try and buy a product that does everything ourselves, which may not be the right solution for the system overall. Because if we had a governance model that says one particular organization will hold the back-end database that collects the data, and every single other organization can then put their own front end onto it, that would be utopia. Unfortunately, that doesn't play out in practice, because every organization has got a different contract length for the solutions they've already got in place. Some of the solutions I showed you on the earlier slide have got different contract lengths. So when Lancashire can actually change also sort of plays into the picture. Getting the roles and responsibility right is also key. So which organization is going to take a lead for collecting the data? Which organization is going to take a lead for curating the data, making sure it's got the right tags on it? And ultimately, what platform and what solution are you going to use to publish the data? So even before you start looking outside your own organization, sort of understanding that governance within is quite critical, especially when you've got multiple solutions in play. Apologies, I feel like I'm going really fast, so I will stop for questions at the end. What we decided after doing a review of everything we had in play was any future platform we buy or any future solution that we enable within the council has to meet these following capabilities. It has to have a level of integration to integrate with either existing systems or allow future growth. There's a growing use of AI out there. Some of the user research we've done has led us down the road of actually the way that people want to interface with this data is changing. So instead of selecting filters, they might just want to present their need and actually be able to then have a service recommended to them. The process of collecting information is really critical in any future platform. Understanding who's going to collect that information, what system they're going to collect it, and ultimately how it's going to be shared is critical to keeping that data alive. Integrations is absolutely critical. It's repeated on this slide twice. Inclusions of options for future extensions. So can you take your service information and then link it to either future referrals, future booking information? And the reason why that needs to be considered is capture of demand. So when you've got lots of services out there, especially when they're not your own services, you need to know what demand is being placed on them if you want to help with any future commissioning activities. So a lot of the data that is collected has use beyond just the open referral data standard. The governance approach we're sort of developing within Lancashire County Council is using our comms team to manage the content and actually manage the platform that will publish the directory, but actually delegating authority to each service directory to say you're responsible for collecting your own data. And that could be by working with a partner, or it could be by setting up processes to collect that data yourself. And where digital services play the part in is we will set up the integrations in an open referral API with any partner that we wish to integrate with. The reason why we've gone down this governance approach is it controls the number of future directories that are published. It makes sure they're published in line with our corporate governance, the structure we want to put in place. And it gives a central point so we actually know what's happening across our organisation, and it prevents other directory products from being purchased. So where are we today? So from that position where we were 2 years ago, where we didn't have a product, we now have a organisation-wide change programme led by our transformation team. Every directorate has bought into that programme and agreed to give up their own platforms and move to a central platform. Our comms team have taken ownership, or will take ownership, of the new platform and standing up resource to actually manage it well, so make sure the content is always kept up to date. The single platform we're looking to buy will allow data sharing in both directions, so with partners, so bringing in information, but also publishing information out to anyone else that wants to use it. We started some extensive user research through our change department, where we're contacting residents and service users to actually understand how they want the output to be designed, how they want it to look, what filters they want to use. We're exploring sort of generative AI, but we're looking at things like, if we had the data set, could we put things like Copilot over the top of it? Could we use other large language models to actually make recommendations of which services to use? And we've started a procurement exercise to actually buy this platform. So we've had the requirements signed off by each directorate. We've gone through that change program, and we've now going to launch into probably an 18-month program to migrate the data from all our existing platforms onto a future open referral compliant platform. So that's kind of the journey that Lancashire has been in so far. Happy to take questions. But thank you.
Thank you very much, Vish. Does anybody have any questions for him? Well, if there isn't one for Vish straight away, I'm going to pose one. Vish, you've been on quite a journey over the past 2 years there, and it's been amazing what you've achieved in terms of governance and directory control, and the ambition to move towards AI and the user research, all good agile methodologies. But I just want to know, maybe for the benefit of everybody else out there, what was the size of your core team that got you to this stage?
Core team has been probably about 2 people, our change manager within the transformation team, and myself from digital services. That team is going to grow. We've got a program of work which is going to bring in 3 extra people from our comms team and an SME from each directorate. So the team is going to get bigger for a short period of time until we deliver the product. But ultimately, the ultimate aim of this is actually to get some efficiencies from what we're currently doing.
That's great. It just gives people a sense to understand what the scale of it's going to be, what level of ambition, and hopefully gives them an understanding of the resourcing needs. That's wonderful. Thank you very much, Vish. Does anybody else have any questions? Otherwise, I think we'll move on to James.
Thanks, Sheldon. Hello, everyone. So our journey is a little bit older. We went live with our directory, will be 2 years ago on Friday, to the date. So we've had our UK compliant directory for a couple of years in Southampton. So yeah, I'm James Marshall, Director of Customer and Leisure from Southampton City Council, and product owner for our directory. My role has changed since I went live with it, but I've kept hold of it because it's something I feel passionate about, actually. So yeah, I'll talk to you a little bit about the journey we went on, but a lot of what we did was driven by trying to deliver a really good user experience. That was one of our kind of defining things, and about ownership as well, because ownership is quite a critical area. We found that we had one directory for the council that served SEND, early years and adults, but none of those departments owned it or kind of cared for it or saw it as something of strategic value, so that it wasn't really being pushed forward or developed. So my team's responsibility was the web team, and when we did regular kind of usability testing and web journey mapping and other things like that, the directory was one of our areas of challenge, because it was often that work, which is where good journeys fell apart, because there was poor user experience with what was delivered before. So we kind of wrestled control of that, took ownership of the directory, and then went through a journey based on some of that user-based evidence, looking at analytics, looking at user journeys, looking at use cases to help drive better user experience. So that's a little bit about what I'm going to talk about today. I think there's three groups of users that we're going to focus on. So there's the organisation who list information, because their user experience is important, because as Kelly alluded to, data quality is really important, but actually, and everyone's very busy, so getting and has lots of pressure on their time. So easy user experience for organisations that list is really important. And then the user who sits in your team and wants to manage the listing, that's another area to look at. But ultimately, the end user is the most important thing, the resident or customer, whatever you want to call them, who needs to find information and help solve a problem. And I think we wanted to look at that in a different way, through a different lens than had been done before. Often I find that we kind of approach the customer journey like someone will have a problem, they'll come to the council or a public sector body, and then a directory will solve their problem. That's kind of the prevailing thought around how this works. And that's how often directories are positioned within, they'll be linked to often on a separate website, and then people have identified what their problem is, and then they're pushed to a directory to solve it, because then there's a big chunk of services that they could access to help them solve their problem. We found through our user research and other things that the real customer journey was actually quite different. People start with a problem, they go to Google, they don't start with the council website, but then the search results take them to a website, hopefully the council website potentially, and then that leads them to a directory in the situation where that solves their problem. And I do think that sometimes as councils we have an obsession with directories and think that directories solve a lot of problems, but I think they do, but they just need to be thought about in the right kind of context of a user journey and the right structure. So directory, what is it good for? I think you need to know its limitations to be able to make good user experiences. So it's good for connecting people with services, it's good for signposting, it's good for widening knowledge and options, and it's good for filtering, but it doesn't solve all problems at that kind of early point. There's almost like a digital triage that needs to happen beforehand. This is what we found through our focus groups and user testing and plotting people's user journeys and understanding how they were connecting the challenge they were facing with the services they needed, and how it needs to kind of filter down through. So we made some decisions that are slightly different to other organisations. We were quite adamant that we didn't want our directory to be a separate website from the council website, because that kind of created another layer of confusion and another step in that journey. So our directory, our UK compliant directory, is fully integrated. Obviously, the directory is a separate website in the back end, but the API points to and is sort of surfaced on our main council website. That was part of kind of trying to unify the user experience and deliver one of the things we are passionate about and think is most important, which is the fact that context is key. So when any user facing a challenge in their life and who needs to find a support service or a service of some sort, being hit with thousands of services in a big list isn't necessarily the best start to that journey, and can be overwhelming for them. So what we've tried to do is set the directory within context, and actually focus on the journey rather than focusing on the directory. The directory is a support part of the journey rather than the end point. So I've got a screenshot here of an example. So if someone goes onto the council website and they're looking for childcare, and they think, oh, maybe a childminder's for me, they'll go to the childminder page. There's a concertina that opens out a range of guidance from us around what to look for in childminder, what childminders do, explanation, context, and there's loads of rich content in there that helps with search engine optimization. So if you're looking for a childminder in Southampton, this page comes up high, you'll find it, and then beneath that is a view of the directory that's filtered to show childminders. So it's not like you have to wade through a load of other stuff. This is, I suppose, one of the risks of having one directory that covers lots of services is there's always lots of irrelevant stuff to every individual user. But this way we can show a filter view. The user can toggle to have the map on, they can put their postcode in to refine the search and make it more geographically relevant to where they are. But it helps the user make informed decisions and kind of flows them through a process which sets that directory within context and makes the journey logical and makes sense. And we've done user testing since going live and had some really good feedback about this approach. This is just one approach. There are others within the website. I'm just gonna, instead of doing a live demo, because they're always a risky thing, I've done some screenshots here that I can talk you through another example of where that context comes through, and it's thinking about what the objective we're trying to achieve with the user, and then how the directory plays a role in that. So this is a journey around using our adult social care self-assessment, which is a tool we built alongside the directory work. Actually, it doesn't always link to the directory, but where it's appropriate, it does. So it suggests to users a range of categories for what their challenge could be. Again, helping to get that context right and flow them to the point that might help them. So if their issue is around staying independent at home, then presents them a range of options around different scenarios. Click on one of those. Need changes to my home to help me stay independent, and then go through another one, moving around the house, and then there's a link to say, actually, there are some services on the directory here that would be relevant to you, seeing as you've identified what your challenge is, and that takes you, rather than this time the page being embedded, sorry, the directory being embedded within the page, this takes you off to a filtered view of the directory, but it's filtered to the exact need of that URL, and then there's a list of organizations that could support with that scenario there. So it's how we think about what the user need is and how the directory supports that, but then make sure that the user journey works around that rather than just hitting them up with the directory early doors. To take it back a step, one thing that was affecting us before and caused us some challenges is what I called the cycle of doom, which is where a directory is only as good as the data that's in it, as we've heard from my other colleagues who presented. The people like reliable information. Take away the context stuff. This is about when you actually get to the information and look at the services that are there. So what we wanted to do in the work we did with our directory is think about the user experience of those listing and make that as easy as possible for it to be kept up to date. The other thing we did is look at multiple ways of keeping the data up to date. So although I'll talk you through a journey for how a service who's listed on our directory can update things in a second, we also added in user suggestion in a kind of a Wikipedia type style where anyone can suggest something's wrong with the information. That is validated by a central team rather than going live immediately, but it allows people to suggest edits and explain when things might not be up to date. And we also linked our directory to the Ofsted and CQC APIs so that any information from those areas comes through automatically and keeps things up to date there. I think I don't think there's a silver bullet for how to keep data up to date. So it's always about giving yourself as many opportunities as possible to make that right. So I'm now going to show you a user journey from the user perspective of a service who have listed. We can set in the system. I didn't say at the start, so apologies. We built our directory as a kind of custom job with a local digital agency called Etch, who code in the same CMS as we used. We looked at various options, but we've built it in Umbraco, which is what our website is. So the whole directory is built in Umbraco, but we used the Scout open source coding. So the styling is very similar to other products that use Scout. So there's that common user experience with other things. We also really like Scout. It's a very clear and clean way of laying stuff out. So it will look familiar to other kind of Outpost Scout directories, but it isn't necessarily Outpost running the back end. It's done in Umbraco, which is also open source, and then aligns with what we were using at the back end, so that it's the same as the website, but it is a different Umbraco instance where the directory is, and then the API kind of brings it together. Sorry, I've gone off on a tangent, but I'll just show you the user journey for an organization who's listed. So we can set the cadence of how often they get an email reminder. So they'll get an email come through their inbox, branded, asking them if their details are up to date. And then if they click check my listing, it takes them to their listing, and it looks exactly how it would look to someone on the website looking at it from a kind of front end point of view. But it just asks them two key questions. Are your details up to date at the top? And then suggest an edit, which we'll do in a minute. But the other thing we found that we really struggled with before with our old directory is there's no option for organizations to say, no, everything's up to date. So we added that button in at the top, so that if on the 6 monthly update email, nothing's changed in the last 6 months, they can just hit everything's up to date, and all that does is change the assured date to the day they click that, and then they won't get badged for another 6 months, but we know that everything else has changed. So it's a really quick and easy process to tell us nothing's changed. It's also a really quick and easy process to change things. So if you do click suggest an edit, then takes you through the process of what's changed. You can click on what option that is next, and then it opens up the listing in an editable way with all the headings and categories. They edit that, and then they hit save at the top, and then that goes, if they're the owner of the listing, goes directly to live at that point. And it's a very quick and easy process. We were very adamant we didn't want any logins or accounts, because nobody wants to log in, do they? Let's be honest. And we have to log in and forget our password to so many things in life. And that was how the old directory worked. People had to register an account, have a login, log into a portal to make updates. And what ended up happening is they didn't, because A, it was arduous, B, they'd probably forgotten their password, and C, someone's moved on from the organization, and then they were the person who had the access to it. So this will go to the generic email address that's listed, so info at little gardeners play group, whatever.co.uk, and then anyone can follow the link if it's secure from that point of view, and make an edit to the listing. So what we're trying to do is remove those barriers from access and sort of digital process barriers, to make it as easy as possible for organizations to keep their data up to date and support a well-functioning directory, because it's all about the user experience getting to the listing, but also the user experience of those listings to make sure that data is up to date and usable. So in conclusion, I think the directory is a really important tool, and ORUK is really important because it allows standardization. One of the things we haven't done yet, but are keen to do, is bring in more API feeds from other areas, because people don't just work or access services from one geographical area, and having standardization helps you to blur those boundaries and provide decent services, a decent sort of mix of options to people. All users matter to make the experience work. Context of the directory is really key in making that user experience work. A load of listings on their own aren't going to solve anyone's problems, and it's an ongoing learning process. We still use analytics and user testing as a regular basis to help tweak and refine our user journey. You never go live and just finish something like this. While the project team might fall away and get moved on to resource elsewhere, it's important to have that kind of continuous improvement and user feedback loop, so we can continue to improve our user experience and the way that our directory is used to benefit communities. Thank you.
Thank you very much for such a comprehensive presentation, James. That was really enjoyable. We've got some questions in the chat here. Yang Wayang, please apologise if I mispronounced your name, but how can the web form for childminders be assured that the whole action is completed between social worker and the clients? We find very often this type of web form is one-way conversation without feedback.
Sorry, I'm trying to find it.
Jan, if you'd like to come on to the conversation.
Yeah, no, well, I can. I was just reading that. So I wasn't sure which web form. So this is for a childminder updating their details. Is that what you mean?
Oh, you have a session called the context is the key, and then you give the example of a childminder as the entry point. Yeah.
Yes.
So I would imagine a social worker will record information for a case for the client, and then the whole case will start from that point. Is that correct?
Potentially, I suppose I was looking at it more from a user point of view of somebody looking for a childminder to support their children's needs. I wasn't thinking about it from a social worker's point of view, although a social worker can access the information and find a childminder that's relevant.
Yes, well, okay, childminder is a type of social work as well. I mean, if a childminder provides support to children, how can we know the whole support has been completed for a child? Because basically, there's no signature from a child or from a client to confirm that the whole support has been completed. That's quite similar to a delivery. If you order something from a website, say DPT or post office will send you a package. You will need to sign a certain package to ensure that service has been completed by the courier.
Yeah, that's true in that journey, but I don't think that's true in a directory search journey, because it's about presenting options. And what we monitor analytics around clicks on phone numbers, clicks on links to the individual childminder to see where people's journeys took them and whether they did end up contacting them. But I suppose it's not in our gift or part of our objective to know exactly which childminder that user ended up going with, or if they ended up going with a childminder at all. It's about giving them the information and resources to make an informed choice. Any childminders listed on our directory will be Ofsted registered, and we pull through the Ofsted information through the Ofsted API, so that's all done automatically. So that's the kind of assurance piece, but we don't necessarily need that. It's about providing information and choice rather than completing that journey. They're not ordering things through us. We're like a source of information to facilitate their choice.
Yeah, well, okay, that's fine. The thing is that in this channel, is there any mechanisms to for the client to provide the feedback? So I think like quite a lot of councils have their own websites. Yeah, there seems a little mechanism to collect the feedback from the public. So quite often the council have to rely on the social media to collect the feedback.
On individual social workers?
No, on general, the public services to the public. For example, you can find lots of feedbacks from Google's and Trustpilot.
Yeah.
Those kind of websites, you know how the public feel to public's opinion to the local authority services. I mean, if we are going to adopt the open referral system and provide community voluntary services to the public, how can we know the charities has done a good job?
We can't.
For the public, or the council has done a good job to those vulnerable groups. Is any mechanism embedded in the system to collect the feedback from the clients or from the vulnerable groups?
There isn't, but that is something that could be looked at in the future.
I think it could be, yeah. In the interest of time, I think we need to move on to the next presentation, but thank you for your point, Ryan. I think this was a really interesting point to be made. But I want to hand over to Ian. I know there's other questions from Steve Taylor and Chris Small, but hopefully we can pick those up at the end. Over to you, Ian.
Sorry, thanks, Sheldon. Just taking control. Has that moved on now?
Yes, we can see you.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I'm Ian Singleton, working on the Central National Project for Open Referral UK. I must admit, I'm not too comfortable with that job title there, subject matter expert. I'll accept subject matter experience, but maybe not an expert. Just very quickly, I'm going to explain that one of the key strands of ORUK is to support councils and their partners and suppliers to implement Open Referral UK. And I think, we've just heard from 3 case studies And this is something that, because there's that many stakeholders involved, it can get quite complicated. And I think Vish made a good point of saying that you need to understand the whole chain, and you need to put effort across that whole chain, because if something falls down, then the whole thing collapses. So this needs to be taken seriously. We are here to support you. Most of the support is going to emanate from a website. This website is not quite ready at the moment. We're hoping to release this in early March, but I just want to kind of outline what it's likely to provide from March, and obviously the focus is really to support the implementation of ORUK. There are 4 basic cornerstones to the website. Don't know quite what this is going to look like just yet, but the 4 that are in front of you. We've got some updates. We've got some help in adopting the standard. We've got a community section, and then we've got some developer resources. And I'm just going to quickly flick through each of those 4. As far as the updates concerned, you've heard 3 case studies. We're going to be putting case studies on there. Other useful information that just keeps people up to date and helps them move forward. Great to understand what other people have done in trying to work out how you're going to implement it in your particular area. So that's the updates. The section about helping you to adopt the standard. We've actually delivered 3 documents. So we've delivered an exec summary for senior managers to understand the why that we should be implementing Open Referral. We've done a business case document and a business case template to help obviously with the finances, and we've also done a project initiation document for those project managers who are going to look to implement Open Referral in their area. Now, as I said, this is not going to be live until early March, but we are going to create PDFs of those documents, and everybody who's signed up to this event will receive an email with those PDFs, and we'd like you to start looking through those documents to set out what your thinking is before the website goes live in early March. So those are the support documents, and there may be more in the future. In our bottom left, we obviously want a community. This is an opportunity for you to ask those questions. You can see there's lots of nuances involved in this, technical, political, economic, etc. This community forum is actually live now. It is an international standard Open Referral, so bear that in mind. It's not just the UK. And again, we're going to send out an ability for you to access that community forum, join that community forum with those documents, and that'll be sent out to those people who've have attended today. And then lastly, we've got a section for the developers. There is actually a technical overview document which kind of sets out for developers just to understand what their role might be. And again, we're going to create that into a PDF, and we will email that out ahead of the website, so you've got that. This section will have all the documentation, but importantly, there is a means there to validate compliance of an API to make sure it is meeting the standards, so that anybody who's consuming the data from that API knows what they're going to be getting. There's information there about, oops, I've gone too far, about feeds and whether they're compliant at the moment, they're pass and fail. So that's going to have information about the for developers. So we've got updates with case studies, we've got adopt the standard, various documents, we've got the community, and we've got the developer. Those are the main pillars of the website, which is coming soon, early March, and we will send an email out to invite you to the forum and those PDF documents early that might help you get going on your project. If in the meantime you need any support, then use the email address hello@openreferraluk.org.uk. Thanks, Sheldon.
Thanks, Ian. Short and sweet. I think we're going to questions now. So there's a few questions in the chat. Does anybody have any questions for our speakers, please? Let's see, was there only one? Louise Burke, the importance and sustainability of open standards is really important, but not something that is financially supported by UK government. How does ORUK ensure sustainability going forward for its core offering that is dependent on getting pieces of money from potential clients? Very good question, Louise. And we are exploring now what is going to be a sustainable model for OR UK in the longer term and how we can also support councils. I can't give any answers to that right now, but this is very much in our thinking. We do want this to be on a sustainable footing for the longer term, because obviously we put a lot of time and resource into this and we don't want to see it fall off a cliff. Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question. I just want to read to the last speaker. Is there the answer's just appeared in the chat, really, which is if there's a data model available that we can have a look at and understand the structures. It appears that there is.
Yeah, sorry, I've just put that answer in, but the email that's going out on the technical overview, there is an entity model in there, which is a high-level one that people get the main entities, but the full detail is also available at the click of a button.
Brilliant, thank you, Ian.
Thanks, Louise. Yes, I do understand you have you're looking after Open Active as well. Any further questions? Chris, did you have your question answered in the chat?
Yes, I think so. It was about a kind of one of the things we come across is when working with NHS professionals or other partners across Dorset, they ask about verification of the services in there because we have a lot of community-based services. And I think in part it may link to the conversation James was having with the lady earlier as well. But it was good to see we've got a response that kind of clarified the approach in Lancashire. Because I guess it's horses for courses in terms of what are we looking to achieve? Are we looking to make people aware of the services available? Are we looking to quality assure them in any way and provide a kind of a review type website for all the services? And as James I think explained, it's not the latter yet, but that doesn't mean that's not a future development potentially, I guess. So yeah, thank you.
Thanks a lot. One from Ben Unsworth. I think this one's for you, James, of your presentation. Was there any resistance to bringing the service into the central teams, as directories are often owned by service teams?
Yeah, there was. And there was also resistance because to having one technological approach to all the directories. Children's services wanted to go off and buy this directory, they'd seen this council use, and adults wanted to. So there was a bit of corralling, but now they wouldn't dream of doing anything else because of the user experience. I think that's what has got them together. I think when we were able to show them our focus on user experience and what we brought the expertise on user experience and the digital side of things, they brought their expertise on adults, children's and SEND. We came together and created a unified board and made it a partnership where we could both input and bring different skills to the table. That was what made it successful, and then we got senior level buy-in and we were able to progress. But yeah, there were challenges early on. We thought the whole thing was going to fall on its face, but that is a real challenge. But it's the same as, it depends on your structure, I suppose. Fortunately, we had a centralized web team, so website was owned in one place, so it made sense to align it as another digital product within that. But if you don't have it like that, that may be more of a challenge.
Okay, that's great. Thank you, James. We've got some more questions come through in the chat here, which were submitted in advance, which Laura's just posted. This is for the panel. What was your experience of the data migration process, including timescales and resourcing?
I would say for the project with CAN, we essentially started from scratch. So in the 18 months, including the full product implementation, we've collected services for 250 organisations in about 18 months, if that's helpful. But I understand if you're implementing this work from a council perspective, you're likely to have a directory already existing, so that might be more of a James question, if so.
Yeah, it was a bit of a pain. We were moving over from an open objects product that was with their standard formatting But what we did is we culled things. So we sent out lots of emails to those on the directory, and if people didn't respond, we then paired things back and then moved the minimum amount over that we'd heard from, and then it was a slightly manual task, but it was manageable. And it's worth doing it because it then manages itself once you're into this new platform. And if we were to change suppliers, the data is in a way that would work with other platforms. So you're not tied down to one supplier's way of doing things, which is where we were before. So another benefit for ORUK.
Great, thank you very much. There's another question here. I think Vishal already touched upon this. How is the product supported by your in-house team? And Vish said he was about to grow, but it was a core team of 2. James, what was your experience of that? And also Kelly.
Sorry, can you say that again?
Yeah. So basically, how was the product supported by your in-house team? So, I mean, what was the core size of your team for developing this, and also what is the future for it in terms of support?
Well, that's part of the reason we made it. We made sure our directory was built in Umbraco because that's what our core team used. So it was a similar technology platform. We had a fixed-term extra developer for the period of building. I mean, our build was quite quick. We started building in October and we went live in January. So although we'd done some of the kind of organizational work and got sort of people in the right place to take it on, we were able to build and deploy quite quickly. And then it's just and we haven't grown our team. It's basically been absorbed as additional tasks for our core digital team, which is 5 people strong.
I'll probably expand on the answer that I gave before. It depends which element. So if it's the front end, we have got a pre-existing web team that use Umbraco, and they will develop the Umbraco sites. It's the things like the integrations you need to build. It's the things like the backend database. Those are the things that we're sort of having to implement now. And we're looking to sort of put that extra resource into digital to manage those bits. Most of it will be project work. It'll be delivered by an existing team. It's an integration you've got to build, and then you move on to the next project. The bit that I sort of mentioned earlier was around the ownership. James mentioned it. Lots of directorate, lots of services have got their own products. We've got tons of them. They all have to give it up, but they're only going to give it up if they know they can get a service from a central team. And that's why we're putting that central teams within comms to focus on the branding and the look and feel. But it will be supported by digital, and ultimately our vendor, if we go for a cost product, we're not looking to build something ourselves. We're looking to buy a platform that's supported by a third party.
Thank you. I'm going to move on to the next question as well. So the benefits of ORUK, has it supported a channel shift? I'm hoping the answer is going to be yes here.
I would say that we're getting there. So in the 18 months that I've worked in this role, there are certain representatives from the integrated care system that are starting to understand the benefits, but it's very much a cultural journey. And I think, like I said in my presentation, really refining your narrative and making it clear the difference between a shared data set and a user interface is really important to drive that cultural change.
James, are you starting to see the benefits of this?
Yeah, I mean, if I'm honest, we had really poor analytics beforehand, so it was hard to know what our baseline was because of the way the previous directory system worked. But the way we're working now, we have quite detailed Google Analytics on all activities, and we can event track and clicks on numbers and websites and email addresses of individual listings. But yeah, our usage is steadily moving up. I think we've got more work to do in terms of getting our own teams, social work teams, and other people using it more, because I think you find horror stories of internally held directories and in Excel spreadsheets and things that social workers use for their own referring. And what we want to do is try and drive behaviour so that they're using the common platform that everyone's using, because the more people use it, the more people see it, and it helps to that kind of keeping it up to date thing. So we've not solved all our problems yet, but yeah, certainly that usages are going up and it's connecting more people with services within the community.
Vish?
We're hoping to see that. One of the problems we've got at the moment, and I think we're a bit behind Southampton on their journey here, is we just can't tell out of our current solutions that the reporting isn't rich enough to tell us what's happening. So if we get a solution that lets us sort of have those types of analytics on the top of it, we're hoping to see that channel shift.
Okay, great. I've seen another question about the National Data Library. We're actually in conversations with our team over at DSIT, so watch that space. But I think we're going to, for the benefit of time, and we're only down to a minute, I'm going to move on to the next slide and ask about feedback basically for this session. So Laura's going to pop into the chat the feedback here, and if you can feedback in this session, would be really great. But all the other questions we have not answered, we'll respond with in a written form, basically saying, along with some slides as well. So those questions we're not taking, we'll respond to as well. But also, I just want everybody to ask everybody to say thank you to the speakers, because they've done a great presentation. There's been lots to learn here, and I think it's been a very rich session. So thank you very much. And it's now past. I think we'll call it there. Thank you very much.